Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Pick Six. I am Ryan Boyer. Eric Halterman is off this week, and filling in, longtime fantasy baseball expert, Mr. Jason Collette, and also RotoWire contributor, Jason Collette. And Jason is the resident Rays fan, are we in mourning here? Are we accepting all the trades that are going down? Was it time for them to happen?
Well, the inevitability of it all was always there. I mean, I was having this conversation with a fellow fan yesterday, and he's like, "But the club's in the thick of the playoff hunt." I'm like, "Not really." You know, they had roughly a 15 to 20% chance, which is still a chance, but it's 1 in 5 chance you're not going to be there. And the underlying indicators of the team made it a very volatile situation that, you know, they're allowing more runs than they're scoring. They have their problems. They don't have enough extra base hits in the lineup type of thing to sustain this. And they also have the toughest remaining schedule in baseball. So there were a lot of factors playing against them. I'm just surprised. The only surprise to me was that it happened before the day of the deadline, that they did it as they did. And quite frankly, I think the return from Baltimore sucks. At least I watched when the Rosarena news came out. I knew of Aiden Smith. I went and looked up the pitcher. I'm like slaughtering his name, but I was like, okay, that looks like Tanner Houck. I like this. So like I watched that, but then nothing I'm seeing from the write-ups of the prospect hounds, like what Baltimore sent Tampa Bay for Zach Eflin. So it's like, to me, it's like that one's not going to sit well. I wish they would have tried to shop him around, but they clearly see something they like. And yes, they should have, they've earned enough cachet to be like, okay, let's give it some time. All trades need at least 2 years. That's always been my thing, either fantasy or real. Trades need 2 years. So if you're like in a dynasty league, keeper league, and trades happen, but I don't see this Baltimore trade working out well. I would love to be wrong, but it's like you trade a middle of the back guy and a front rotation guy and get 5 low-level prospects that all came out of the last draft class. And it seems like the writing is on the wall that they are making a push for, all right, we're going to relaunch this team as we get the new stadium. And next couple of years are going to be a little rough. It's going to be like the middle of the last decade, where they were kind of floating around between 75 and 85 wins, which is, it's a lot better than what the White Sox are doing right now. So, I mean, I guess I can't complain in that regard, but I just, again, all those things shocked me.
Yeah. I mean, as a Cardinals fan who was Zach Eflin was connected to them, I'm also wishing that they would have held out for maybe a little bit of a better package, but obviously, as you mentioned, they have something that they see in those guys that they like. So probably a couple of years before we can figure out whether it's a favorable trade or not. But it is our FAAB show this week, as you all know, and we will get to our FAAB priorities in just a second. But we do have those headlines to go over, and might as well start with those Rays trades. Randy Arozarena to the Seattle Mariners. I know it's shocking. The Rays and the Mariners made another trade. Mariners get a much needed bat. I think, Jason, you probably agree that they probably aren't done, shouldn't be done. I don't think they were one bat away from being where they need to be from an offensive standpoint, but Randy Arozarena certainly should help them out. Off to a really rough start, but he's been one of the better hitters in baseball since like June 1st. Not a great landing spot from a fantasy perspective, going to a pitcher's park, not a great lineup. Of course, you could say that he was already in that situation in Tampa Bay. But Arozarena hopefully reinvigorated by a little bit of a pennant race here. And as I mentioned, the resident Cardinals fan, as you know, I know the Arozarena trades can only work out in a positive fashion. So
yeah.
What's your take on it? Well, let's get the Rays perspective first as the Rays guy. Is there one guy you think benefits maybe most from Arozarena departing Tampa, or is it going to be kind of a mix and match situation like the Rays often like to do? What do you think there?
I think for now it's going to be a mix and match situation as they want to try to give players an opportunity to see what's really there. I would say in the immediate future, Johnny LaDuca would be the guy that benefits the most. It's really been tough to put a grade on what he is or isn't because his playing time's been so inconsistent. And so like statistically, it's like it is what it is right now just because of the way he's played. I would look for a possibility of Cam Meisner coming up and seeing what they have there, because again, if they're looking to relaunch this team around the time for the new stadium opening, then the next couple of years should truly be, an open audition. Let's see what we have in the organization. Let's see what works, and let's see what we have to go acquire to supplement what we have. So short term, LaDuca, longer term, possibly Meisner. There, obviously, by the time 2028, then we can have more Chandler Simpson conversations, because would love to have that. I don't want to accelerate that guy. I know he's like trying to steal 100 bases this year, and he's been awesome down in the lower levels. But that's all. He's probably already on somebody's keeper dynasty team, so it wouldn't matter there. But like with Seattle, like you said, this is moving. Not that Tropicana was doing any favors for Arozarena, but T-Mobile is going to do them even fewer. It's the toughest park on right-handed pull power, which is what Arozarena does best. So it could be a bit of a struggle there, but I'm trying to look at the upside, thinking, okay, maybe he will even steal some more bases, because he's always had that green light, and he's doing better this year. Last year he ran into a lot of outs. This year he's done better on that. So we'll see what Scott Service does with him there in Seattle. And just the threat of Arozarena. He was in the stands at Tropicana Field last night watching the game while the Mariners were putting up an 8 spot in the first inning. So just the threat of him in the lineup is already paying dividends, because let's be real. Seattle had scored 11 runs over their previous 9 games. 11. And they lost Crawford, and they've lost J-Rod. It's like, this was one move, and you're right. They certainly should not be done. They need to go out and get at least another guy for this, because offensively, that's been their problem. They got great pitching. The offense has just been a struggle, and anchoring that ship down using all the references I can. But yes, they need more hitting.
Yeah, and the other big Rays trade, as you mentioned you weren't crazy about the return for Eflin. Just the immediate fantasy impact of Eflin to Baltimore. As we know, Camden Yards is now very much a good place to pitch, so that's good for Eflin. He's going to have a good offense backing him. I think it probably ticks up his value a bit. And from a Rays perspective, looks like Jeffrey Springs is going to slide into that rotation vacancy. He is, at least from a numbers perspective, looked really good on his rehab assignment. Sounds like he's going to get the Marlins in his first start, so that's a nice cushy landing spot to start off with. Not sure what the workload is going to look like, at least immediately, certainly. But Jeffrey Springs, I think you'd probably agree, is worthy of a stash if he's still out there in your league.
Yeah, absolutely. He probably is going to be a 5-ish. I would use Shane Baz as a good example. Baz last night was probably the best he's pitched since coming back, outside of a rough first inning. I watched the game last night. The first inning was a bit rough command-wise. And then after that, really settled down, looked great. And honestly, if the offense could have done anything, maybe he gets a win. But that was the best I've seen Shane Baz look since coming back from injury. And with the thing with Springs, it's always the feel. The changeup was such a money pitch for him. And that's always my concern about guys coming back off a long layoff, is the feel for that off-speed pitch. And I see Uncle Ted Drew Rasmussen is right on the heels of Springs coming back as well. So he definitely will be in play.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because correct me if I'm wrong. The plan is to put him in the bullpen, though, at least for this year. Is that right, yep. Rasmussen? Yeah, and that's
when they acquired the two of those guys. That's what they did. It's like Springs. It was like Springs going to work a little longer, and Rasmussen was actually fantastic out of the pen. And then they stretched him out. But I would see for the rest of this season, Rasmussen would likely be working in the pen. Maybe the two of those guys were tandem. It'll be like Springs starting the game, Rasmussen coming in after him, and then whatever they need to do to sequence things. Because, like I said, the rest of the season is an audition. I definitely don't want them to roll over and play dead, but they had a lot stacked against them, and so if this is what they're going to do, then see what's in the organization, and let's see what they need to go acquire moving forward.
Yep, one of the guys that I'm going to be recommending on our priority ads is one of those guys who could get an opportunity here soon. So, and we got more trades to talk about. It was a very busy Fridays from a trades perspective. As someone who was on news for RotoWire, I can tell you that I certainly stayed busy. Austin Hayes went to the Phillies, and looks like Hayes is pretty much going to be a short side platoon bat right now. That's the plan. I don't know that there's a whole lot actionable as far as fantasy goes from the fallout for him. I think I'm most interested to see, is Heston Kjerstad going to be getting more reps now in left field for the Orioles? I noticed that Cedric Mullins was on the bench 2 times in a row against a righty, and they put Colton Cowser over in center. So are they going to want to give Kjerstad a longer look? We've also heard Mullins' name pop up in trade rumors too. So Orioles interested apparently in maybe dealing from surplus at the major league level, and even though they have, as we all know, a major surplus in the minors as well, they could do pretty much about whatever they want at this deadline. But going to be interesting to follow to see what they do. But yeah, I think the biggest fallout from this trade is Heston Kjerstad going to be getting more reps in Baltimore?
Yeah, I would hope he is. When you look at their situation, they have all the offense. One of the things they have the couple of switch hitters, and if they can maximize their left-handed power in that stadium, it certainly works out for them. Kjerstad, obviously a high pedigree hitter, did extremely well at Arkansas before when he was drafted, has had some health injuries, but has hit well. It's like, okay, you have this. They've got to either, try to do something. So when I heard about the Eflin trade, I was hoping that like something of this high level was in that trade, but alas, no. Connor Norby as well. Like eventually he's got to get out of Norfolk. Something's got to happen. So if they're going to make another trade, that's where it would go. But yeah, I think Kjerstad's the biggest benefit of this. And I like the move for Baltimore's perspective because it also, it frees up for them. Hayes, obviously he's had some seasons where he's been great defensively. The metrics don't play that out, but then you watch him play and there's been, he does well. So when you look at the move for Philly, it's like, okay, this is an upgrade from Christian Pache off their bench. It allows them to do some things. And then when you look at it from Baltimore's perspective, they needed more pen. And I actually wrote about this in my article this week at RotoWire, talking about, I'm a little fearful of Baltimore's bullpen situation, and they needed some more insurance. So getting Sir Anthony Dominguez will certainly help. I don't believe they're done in that bullpen situation, because if I'm trying to build for a World Series contender, I can't move forward with Craig Kimbrell as my guy. I just can't. He's already blown more saves this year than he has since 2011. They need more pillars in the bridge to get to that win. And so I think Dominguez is the first of those pillars, and Baltimore's not done yet.
Yeah, I suspect they're going to add more as well. We've seen that they're connected to Tanner Scott among many contenders. That he's definitely a hot commodity. One reliever that's already been traded, Jimmy Garcia, went from the Blue Jays to the Mariners. Another trade for Jerry DiPoto. As Scott Service likes to manage his bullpen, we could see Jimmy Garcia getting some saves. They traded Ryan Stanek as well to the Mets, and he had gotten a handful of saves. Andres Munoz is still going to be the guy in that bullpen, but I think it's the biggest fantasy fallout is in Toronto. Chad Green is still there for now, so he's going to be at the top of the heap for closing duties there. But we've seen his name pop up in a lot of trade rumors as well. He is under a contract for an additional year, so they don't necessarily have to trade him. But I think we've seen his name come out there enough that it's fairly likely, I think. I would guess it would fall to Nate Pearson after that. So maybe he's a potential stash. But yeah, what's your read on that trade?
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place. I mean, on the Seattle perspective, it's weird to see them trade away Stanek and then get Garcia in the play. And they also got good news that Gregory Santos's knee injury that took him out of the game a couple of days ago is not serious. So they'll still have that back end of the rotation. And I have Munoz in AL Labor. I would like to see him get some saves. Like this week, I have Munoz and Green. I have 0 saves so far this week. I'm hoping to get one this weekend. When you flip it over to Toronto, I agree with you. Green's on that roster for now. But when you look at what the Nationals got for Hunter Harvey, and you look at drawing a blank on the other reliever trade,
the
AJ Puck. You look at them getting De Los Santos. You look at what teams are giving up to get these relievers. And if I'm Toronto, I'm absolutely putting Chad Green out there. It's like I'm again, I wrote it up in my article. But like one of the things I looked at was Cleveland. Cleveland's in first place, but they have. Stephen Vogt has pressed the pedal to the metal with that bullpen, and they have 6 different guys that have thrown at least 40 games this season. And the only other team to do that's Nationals. And so when you have a first place team and a last place team with the same stat, that's a little problematic. And they need another guy. Chad Green is a multi-inning reliever. He would be an awesome fit in Cleveland. And so again, if I'm Toronto, I'm definitely shopping him. I would agree with Pearson to a point. He absolutely has the stuff, but honestly, it's like batter by batter with that guy. I don't know why I've seen a lot of him lately and watching games, but there are times when he looks like the Nate Pearson that we fell in love with a couple of years ago. And then there are times where he can't throw a strike. And stuff's all over the place. I've been impressed with what I've seen with Genesis Cabrera, which again, if Toronto's just going to fold it in, I mean, they're already a last place team anyhow. We're talking about a save a week. But if they're going to just fold it in, Cabrera's still on the roster. Maybe he's the guy because I've seen him working a lot of 8 innings, a lot of 8th innings lately. So he could be the guy as well. So if somebody spends a couple of bucks on Pearson, maybe you go the other direction and take Cabrera and see how it plays out. But Cabrera's definitely been part of that late inning situation there in Toronto.
Yeah, we had some non-trade news to cover as well. Kodai Senga looked really good coming off the IL in his first start. Got 9 strikeouts, I believe, over 5 1/3, just a couple runs allowed, but went down with another injury. Thankfully not his arm, but a calf strain, undergoing an MRI today. I have not seen anything about results of that just yet. Carlos Mendoza seemed optimistic it wasn't super serious, but I don't know how much that actually means. I suspect that Senga is probably going to wind up going back on the IL. Hopefully not, but we'll see about that. Another injury-related news, Devin Williams seems like it's going to be any day now, maybe today, that he is activated. He's looked really good on his rehab assignment coming back from a back injury. And McGill's looked really good as well. What's your read on how Milwaukee's going to handle that bullpen situation? I mean, I've got to assume Devin Williams is going to get that job back, but maybe not right away.
Yeah, again, getting back to the long layoff feel, especially for a guy with a changeup that features that. But the other piece of this, if Devin Williams had not been, there's a couple of factors in play here. Milwaukee is still trying to chase a playoff spot. They also just lost Yelich, possibly for the season with that. And so with Williams, they're coming into the season, there was talk if they were just going to trade him. But it's tough to trade in the position that they're at right now. But at the same time, if the market, again, if teams are going to be giving up nice returns for relievers, maybe they have him back. He pitches a couple of games and he's gone Tuesday. It's just a situation to really watch right now. So I could see them easing him in, but at the same point, they're going to want him out on the mound because if they are entertaining any thought of trading him, they need to have him out on the mound pitching and showing everybody else that he's ready to go.
Yeah, and a little bit of a tough situation for McGill owners as well. Like I mentioned, he's been awfully good, and if they do hang on to Williams, I suspect it's probably going to be McGill's job for a little bit longer. But he's probably going to wind up falling back into a setup role. So if you're in a saves plus holds league, that's not as big of a deal, but those who relying on him for saves might have to be looking in a different direction soon. One more injury, or a couple injury things to hit on. Kyle Tucker, the worst bone bruise in the history of bone bruises. I've just got to imagine there's something else going on with that injury. The timetables have been all over the place. Seemed like a minor injury when he went down in June. Still not close to a return. We heard talk about this week of, I guess it was a radio interview that Dana Brown was giving, and he was asked whether Kyle Tucker is going to be back by September, and he basically said, "Well, yeah, I should hope so. I'd be disappointed if that doesn't happen." So it was kind of the question that led him into that. So not necessarily that he's thinking September 1st or whatever in regards to a timeline, but
Right.
Still lacking clarity there. He's been working out on the field, but like cuts and stuff like that, he's still feeling some discomfort. So unfortunately, Kyle Tucker, a beast when he's been healthy this year, but still kind of TBD. And Giancarlo Stanton as well, been a little iffy on his timeline as well. The Yankees are saying maybe Monday now. Sounds like he'll skip a rehab assignment. At least that's the plans. But what are your reads on those two injury situations?
Yeah, Tucker went from day to day to week. Now we're talking month to month. And it's just, again, it seemed innocuous when it happened. But, here we are. As I was talking off air with you, this one hurts because he's on multiple rosters with me. It is just, those teams already needed help, and losing Tucker certainly doesn't help factors there. So, it's the situation where it is. Like if you were to have a race, who's going to come back first, Mike Trout, Kyle Tucker, or Giancarlo Stanton? This is actually a race that Stanton should win because there's a chance. They're saying now that they're hoping to have him active for the series against Philadelphia on Monday. But they said the same thing coming out of the break. They said, he's just going to take some time off, and coming out of the break, he'll be good. Well, we're still waiting for him to come back. So it's 2 weeks past that date. Again, he's still a glacier, doesn't run, but the Yankees certainly need his back in the lineup. That team, I saw somebody the other day compare them to the Angels. It's like you had Ohtani and Trout, you've got Soto and Judge, and you got nothing else on that roster right now. And since Stanton's gone away, that offense has truly fallen apart. I mean, they have struggled to have consistent games. Like last night, they scored 7, they still lost. They had 2 games earlier this week against Tampa Bay. They scored 6 and they won, but around that, they couldn't generate any offense. So they need him back in the lineup if they're going to keep Baltimore off, because Baltimore's surging, and the Yankees have arguably been one of the worst teams by record since Stanton's been out.
Yeah, maybe Luis Severino was on to something about saying all you have to do is pitch around those two. They're 2 big guys. Yeah, I was on the RotoWire news beats when Stanton was doing some running on the field the other day, and I started to write that it doesn't look like he's running at full effort, and then I realized, well, maybe he actually was running at full effort. It's kind of hard to tell with him these days because he's not exactly fleet of foot. He used to be able to run it pretty well, but that's no longer the case.
No.
We are going to get to some pick 6 stuff soon, but we're going to go into our FAAB priorities first. And Jason, why don't you go ahead and lead us off with your first guy?
So I have Jeff McNeil down here, who I found is 46% owned on Yahoo. McNeil's been one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. I'm surprised that he's still sitting out there at this point, but he has really turned. I was lamenting last week. I had an option. I needed to fill utility, and it came down to somebody else or McNeil, and I chose somebody else. It was that night that McNeil had 2 home runs. I was like, ugh. But it's like that's when he started off, and so he's still sitting out there as a free agent in over half of Yahoo leagues. So McNeil would be somebody that I would aggressively be targeting because the Mets are hot. They're surging. They are, and he got that game-winning RBI because Ramon Laureano. I don't even know how to explain what he did in that game. But, it is what it is. But McNeil's somebody who just jumped off the list when I was sorting through. I'm like, holy cow, this guy's still available in over half of leagues? Yes, please.
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago, it was Jose Iglesias was stealing at bats for McNeil, and then all of a sudden he's gone on this just power rampage. So certainly has shown the ability in the past to be a worthwhile fantasy contributor. So while he's hot, pick him back up. My first guy, Victor Robles. I guess this qualifies as a post hype sleeper, something like that. All of a sudden, Victor Robles remembered how to hit since joining the Mariners. 364, 444, 564. Couple home runs, had one last night. 8 stolen bases, has not been caught in 65 plate appearances with the Mariners. He's got 9 barrels already since joining the Mariners. He had 19 over the last 4 seasons combined in Washington, and 9 was his high for all of those seasons. Already has matched that in 65 plate appearances with the Mariners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's
batted first in the Mariners' last game. He had hit hit second the last 5 games before that. So opportune spot in the lineup. Maybe that changes a little bit with a Rosarena added to the mix. And as we mentioned before, I mean, the Mariners probably aren't done adding offense, so it's possible Robles could get squeezed out of regular at-bats by, this time next week. But as one of their few guys actually hitting, I think he's fairly safe for now. And I don't know how much power you can ultimately expect. The barrel rate is nice to see, but not a great part for power, of course. But at the very least, while he's getting at bats and batting towards the top of the lineup, could provide some speed. Who you got next?
Yeah, so my next guy, the Robles thing, I would say real quick, I wanted to add like somewhere Derek Van Riper is like, yeah, finally. For those who don't know, DVR loved Robles forever. And like this winter, he's like, I'm done with that guy. And it's like just a reminder that never quit on anybody. At least keep giving them chance after chance after chance. Because Robles is getting things done, especially if you're in a nail-only league. I was bummed I didn't get him a nail labor. Rick and Glenn outbid me by $1, and I needed those steals. And they're an 11th place team, and I'm up at the top. James and I keep jumping each other. And I was looking for Robles, and I was mad. It's like I actually had a moment like, oh, I cannot believe I didn't win that bid. I was like, there it is. But next guy I had was Zach Neto at shortstop. And the reason why is like if you're in a league looking for steals, Neto's already well beyond his career high for steals with 18. But one of the things I look at is I mentioned strength of schedule earlier, and the strength of schedule that we have remaining, the Angels have the easiest strength of schedule. They still have 6 games against the White Sox, 3 against the Rockies, 2 against the A's, 7 against the Jays, 3 against the Nationals, 3 against the Tigers. That's a lot of opportunity to run because not many of the catchers on those squads throw well. Ron Washington does let these guys run, and not to mention that the Angels still have 58 games left on the schedule. And so there's a chance that Neto could get to 30 steals by the time this season's over. He's already at 18 because they have the games. They have the favorable schedule to get this done. When I looked, Neto was just over 50% ownership in these leagues, and he's out there playing every day. And if he's going to run and I'm looking for steals, that's somebody I'm going to jump on.
Yeah, can we please get him hitting higher in the Angels lineup? I mean, we have Anthony Rendon's corpse batting leadoff for the Angels, and Neto's consistently batting in the bottom third of the lineup still. I don't understand that at all, but I'm with you that he's still worthy of rostering regardless. Cheating a little bit with this Tyler Fitzgerald recommendation. He did cross our 50% threshold. Actually, when I added him to this list, he was below, and then he had 2 more home runs last night, so he's jumped above 50%. But like I said, 2 more last night, 5 straight games with a home run sandwiched around the All-Star break for Tyler Fitzgerald. Last 8 games, he's gone 13 for 27, 7 home runs, couple doubles, a triple. Everyday shortstop now for the Giants, also has outfield eligibility. He's a guy who turns 27 in September. Kind of a middling prospect at best, I would say, but put up some numbers in the minors last year. 22 home runs, 32 stolen bases. Also had 2 more each of home runs and stolen bases in 10 major league games last year. So he's showing some power, certainly. I think the speed is probably stickier than the power ultimately with him. But dual eligibility, and he's hitting the ball hard now. He's getting it out of the park, and the Giants looking like they're going to sell. Tyler Fitzgerald should get everyday reps between shortstop, maybe other positions as well. And obviously white hot as you can get, and
Indeed.
Still out there in Yahoo leagues, almost 50% available. So go ahead and pick him up now if he's still out there. Who we got next on your list, Jason?
And me, this is wish casting a trade, but I'm looking at Josh Bell, who is at 25% ownership. When I look at first base situations in Houston and New York, two teams that are contending, John Singleton had a moment yesterday, and Ben Rice has had a couple of moments, but both of those clubs could use an upgrade at first base. Josh Bell brings that experience. So for me, it's like I'm only interested in Josh Bell if I can get him this weekend and he gets traded. He's going to get traded. We know that. It's just where is he going to land? And any of these situations that I've mentioned so far are better than doing what he's doing in Miami. And so for me, it's like if I can get on the front of this and go ahead and grab him, and then if he gets traded to Seattle, then it's like, okay, never mind, I'll move on. But it's just like that's what I'm trying to look at with that is Bell's potential in a better situation for his for offense than what he has in Miami.
Yeah, our last hitter here, I'm going to recommend. I kind of teased it earlier, but Junior Caminero, I think he'll probably get an opportunity at some point after the trade deadline. And we've seen the trades the Rays have made already. We've also heard maybe Isaac Paredes could be on the move, maybe Yandy Diaz, maybe Brandon Lau. Any of those trades would be good for freeing up at bats for Junior Caminero. Just came back from a quad injury at AAA. He's made 3 starts at third base and 3 at second base since his return. I thought that was interesting. I think they're prepping, depending on what they do at the deadline, to have him ready to play a couple different positions if need be. 9 home runs in 40 games in 2024 at AAA. His numbers aren't crazy good this year, but hitting the ball hard, and as we know, very young, and the pedigree is very, very good. Are you with me that you think we'll see Caminero soon?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we would have seen him if he hadn't re-injured himself. We would have already seen him back up with things. But I do agree with the fact that they've used him at third, they've used him at second. Brandon Lau, if he stays with the club, has still been battling that fractured toe situation as well. So they've tried to keep him off his feet in the field and have him DH like he has, and then sitting him as lefties like they did last night against Lodolo with things. So yeah, I definitely would like to see him up soon. I don't even think it's contingent upon what happens with the Diaz, who I would assume is getting traded now, Paredes or Lau. Even if any of those guys don't get moved, which I'd be surprised if at least one of them aren't, there's still room for him. I mean, last night Curtis Mead was playing third base, and he's playing it. He's not a third baseman. The throws are a particular problem, and that's always been the case with him. He doesn't have the arm to play third base, and we need to see if he can hit and be that prospect that 2 years ago, when it was Curtis Mead for Christopher Sanchez, the Rays robbed the Phillies. Well, fast forward now, and the Phillies robbed the Rays because Christopher Sanchez would be great on that club right now, and Curtis Mead's not doing what he was projected to do. So, again, all trades need at least 2 years to breathe, but that trade completely flipped its script over the past 2 years.
Who we got as our first pitcher recommendation?
Yeah, I had to steal this one from you because I was just feeling down. I'm like, oops. But to me, it's like, again, I'm trying to get ahead of what's happening in the trade market. And Tanner Scott is going to be traded by the Marlins. That absolutely has to be done. They'd be stupid if they didn't do it, given the market demand out there. So I'm looking at Andrew Nardi as the next guy up in Miami for whatever saves they have the rest of the season. But, let's be real. Tanner Scott took off. Remember, he didn't even have the closing job last year, got that job in August, and then won some fantasy leagues for some people, what he did in August and September. So for me, it's Nardi. Yeah, I know the ERA is inflated right now, but look at the skills behind the ERA. It's really tough to be like hold that against the guy when his xERA is over 2 runs lower. He's still missing a ton of bats. He's just had some unfortunate, like every inherited runner seems to be scoring the runners that he leaves on base type of thing. But the skills are there for him, and that's, to me, it's the next opportunity. It kind of looks like what Tanner Scott looked like when he got the job. So to me, I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve before they make a trade, and all of a sudden Andrew Nardi's costing a lot of people money next weekend in FAAB. Yeah,
Nardi gave up like 8 runs or something his first 4 appearances of the season, and he's pretty much been a lockdown guy since then. Another reliever, I want to recommend Lucas Erceg. First save for the A's after Mason Miller's unfortunate injury went to Tyler Ferguson. But Erceg pitched the 8th inning of that game against the 2-3-4 in the lineup. And then Ursig got the save Friday. 41 to 13 strikeout to walk rate over 36 and 2/3 innings. Only scored upon once over the last 12 appearances. I got to assume that the Mason Miller injury pretty much knocks out any chance of him being traded. It's still possible. You can trade a guy while he's on the IL, but probably unlikely now. It was already looking maybe unlikely, but haven't seen a timeline yet for how long Mason Miller will be sidelined. And I think Lucas Ursig is at the top of the saves heap in Oakland while he's out.
Absolutely.
Who do you got for your next pitcher recommendation?
So I went with Luis Ortiz out of Pittsburgh. He's currently 40%. He's had 4 nice starts. Looking over some things, yesterday, 3 earned runs in 5 innings with 4 strikeouts against Arizona on a road game, but previously had gone 6, 5 and 2/3 and 7. He's not getting you a ton of strikeouts, but he's getting you enough to hold things in there. He's had 1 win of his last 4 starts here, but he's looked good. I read a recent thing on Lance Bronzowski's Substack about some of the changes Ortiz has made. So when I'm, again, looking through who's below 50%, that name just really jumped out. Maybe it was like the recency bias from reading Lance's recent piece about that, but he really complimented Ortiz on some things he had been doing, and you look at the results and it's starting to show up in his numbers. I mean, the one ugly start he had against Tampa Bay back in June really stands out, but other than that, you see a lot of 0s, 1s, and 2s in his game log, and that's good stuff for a guy that is a free agent in 60% of leagues right now. Yeah,
Ortiz really had issues with lefties last year, but he's been throwing a cutter this year, and I think he might actually be better against lefties than he's been against righties this year. So complete 180 he's done against left-handed batters, and that's helped him out a ton. My last guy is Yariel Rodriguez of the Blue Jays. 2.01 ERA, 0.76 whip, 25 to 8 strikeout to walk rate in 22 1/3 innings and 4 July starts for Rodriguez. He's gone at least 5 and 2/3 innings in 3 of those starts, which is a big deal since he's, his other starts and relief appearances had gone maybe like a max of like 3 innings, getting stretched out more. If you're looking for a silver lining from the injury he dealt with earlier, it's that his workload has been kept down enough to where he should pretty much be able to get cut loose the rest of the way. Control is an issue with him. It was an issue during his time in the minors, has been during his time with the Blue Jays, but I really like the stuff that Rodriguez has. And he's also got 2 starts next week. So good time to pick him up and at the very least stream him. And I like the idea of rostering him for the last couple months. That's it for our priority buys. And we will go to a ad from Pick 6, and then we'll play a little Pick 6 game after that. Did you ever play the over-under game with your friends? You think you can eat this piece of pizza in under 30 seconds, or I know it'll take you over a minute to down that 2-liter. Down that 2-liter. If you have, then you're going to love Pick 6, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Here's how you play during the baseball season. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat like runs, hits, strikeouts, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app. Use the code RWPicks. New customers play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. That's code RWPicks for new customers to play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only at DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. So now let's play a little Pick 6 game here. We are looking at some of the later games from tonight's slate, and I am going to go with Chris Bryant under 5.5 fantasy points for my first pick. Does have 4 hits in 3 games since his return from the injured list, but also struck out 6 times in 14 plate appearances and going up against Blake Snell tonight, who has been on a roll of late. I just don't know if Chris Bryant we're ever going to see that old Chris Bryant again. Don't know if he's ever going to be able to stay healthy for an extended period of time. And I think he could have trouble with Blake Snell tonight. Who's your first pick, Jason?
So my first pick, I said Jose Altuve over 6.5 points against the Dodgers tonight. I watched the latter half of that game because I wanted to see how Framber Valdez was looking, and Valdez looked fantastic last night, by the way, and just really was nice situation going on there. The pitching matchup looks really nice tonight for Altuve and the Astros to take advantage of the Dodgers again tonight with that. So I'm going with the over on Altuve for 6.5 points.
I'm gonna stick with the Rockies again. I'm gonna pick on the Rockies with Blake Snell and his red hotness tonight in San Francisco. Ryan McMahon, who apparently is going to stay with the Rockies because the Rockies are going to Rocky.
Yep.
Under 5.5 fantasy points for Ryan McMahon as well. Has cooled off of late. 1 home run, just a 646 OPS over his last 25 games. He's actually been better against lefties than he has against righties this year, but it's not a massive split. And again, Blake Snell's hot. I'm going to side with Snell in this matchup, so I'll take the under on 5.5 points for McMahon. Your next guy, Mr. Collette.
My next guy, I'm going to take Mark Canha at over 5.5. I jokingly said this before we started recording. He's going to homer off Joe Ryan today because that's what Joe Ryan does. But Canha's been hot. He's also somebody that's very involved in some trade rumors as well with that. And so for me, I'm just going to ride the hot wave here and look at the matchup and say, the home run's coming here, and that he's been on a heater. So let's see what happens. So I'm taking the over on 5.5 with Canha.
I got CJ Abrams over 6.5 fantasy points. My next recommendation. Abrams had 3 stolen bases, 28 points Friday night in St. Louis. I don't know if the Nats had something on the Cardinals, had some kind of read because they were absolutely running wild last night. And we know that CJ Abrams is capable of that. Mm-hmm. He put up 28 fantasy points with basically no offense. It was all in the running game. And as we know, he can bring plenty to the table offensively as well. Kyle Gibson's having a solid season, but he's very gettable. I like the over 6.5 fantasy points for Abrams. Your last guy.
My last guy, I'm taking the under on 8.5 points for Rafael Devers. And the concern I have is if you were watching the game when they were playing in Coors earlier this week, he went to go dive for a ball and immediately went to the ground like he had been shot and holding his shoulder. Stayed in the game, made a decent throw to second base after that. But as somebody who's been through 3 shoulder surgeries, it's never felt right. And I know that Devers was 2 for 3 last night in the game. I'm just concerned that the shoulder soreness is going to leak into his ability to drive the ball. Because again, it's his front shoulder as a lefty, and you can't get that full extension as shoulder because it's sore. You're going to have a tough time hitting the ball over the fence. No, watch, he'll hit 2 home runs today. But I'm just going with the play and saying he's going to have under 8.5 points. I'm just concerned that shoulder soreness is still going to be lingering for a bit.
Yeah, I believe he hurt that back in early on this season. That's why he didn't play in the All-Star game as well. So that's kind of been a nagging thing for him, and he aggravated it in Colorado. So hopefully Rafi will be okay, but I get where you're going with that pick. Budget by pitchers. Start us off, Mr. Collette. Who you got?
Yeah, let's just stay in Colorado. And again, wish casting trades, but looking at the Colorado bullpen situation, the Rockies will rocky and they're not going to trade McMahon, but it doesn't mean they can't trade these relievers. Jalen Beeks is a free agent after the season. He's a lefty. Some team's going to want Jalen Beeks. So for me, I'm looking at Victor Vodnik as somebody that could step into late innings and get the saves. Vodnik is somebody who's got the fastball for it. He's a rookie and he has the inconsistency and the flaws of a rookie, but he's got really nice stuff around that type of thing. So for me, if I'm trying to spec in a deeper league for saves, looking at late innings, Victor Vodnik's the guy that I'm going to try to buy in advance of the Rockies. If they don't sell Jalen Beeks, they should be have the franchise pulled from them. I don't know what you're thinking if you don't pull that, but they have to make some kind of deal, and it's going to free up some saves late. And Vodnik's the guy that I want. He's already jumped in and pulled a couple over the last couple of weeks, so it feels like they're getting him ready for that. And again, I want to be on front of that before news breaks. And then he's, next weekend, he's costing you more.
Yep. I mentioned Ursig is my priority recommendation from the Oakland bullpen, but I figured for the budget buys, I would go ahead and throw Tyler Ferguson in there as well. As I mentioned, he did get the first save after Mason Miller got hurt, and he's having a nice season, 26-10 strikeout to walk rate, over 22 2/3 innings in the majors. Look back at AAA, a nice 43-11 strikeout to walk rate, over 28 in the third innings. He's a 30-year-old rookie, so we're not expecting any long-term fantasy goodness from Tyler Ferguson, but potentially some short-term saves. You're probably going to be dropping him in a week or two, but if you're in a pinch for saves, I think you could, and digging deep, I think you could look his direction. Your next guy, Jason.
My next guy, I'm just surprised that maybe it's because I play in a lot of AL leagues, but how is Cade Smith not on more teams? It may be if he wasn't pitching behind Emmanuel Clase, he could be the closer. That's how nasty Cade Smith stuff is. And he's been great this year. If you're looking for a reliever, he's had 4 wins. He's got the ratios. He's got the strikeouts. He just doesn't have a lot of wins, and he has 1 save, I think, with it. But the way I look at it, I mentioned strength of schedule earlier. Cleveland's got the second toughest schedule the rest of the way. They have 59 games left. That means a lot of close games. So if their rotation doesn't get that win, that means those late leverage relievers will be in position to have that. And Cade Smith just jumps off the chart. I am concerned that as a rookie, he's out there like near the top of the leaderboard of how much he is working. And I wonder what's going to happen, like how he holds up with that if Cleveland does anything. But go watch Cade Smith if you haven't watched him pitch yet. It's just sick. He has a starter's repertoire, and he's using that out of the bullpen. And for me, it's like, even if he's not going to close, I'm looking for late leverage guys that can get wins. And Cleveland's had they lean on their bullpen quite a bit, as we mentioned earlier. And if you have Nick Sandlin's got like 6 wins this year, or even 7 out of that situation. To me, I can see Smith starting to pick up some of these as well. So in the worst case, I'm getting some strikeouts and I'm getting some ratio protection out of it as well. So Cade Smith will be my guy.
Yeah, Jason mentioned that he stole Andrew Nardi for me, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about Andrew Nardi anyway too. Potential to pick up some saves. AJ Puck already is out, and Tanner Scott on the way out. Ignore the ERA, as we mentioned with Nardi. Had a couple blowups early on in the season. The skills are there. 51-11 strikeout to walk rate and 39 in the third innings over the last two seasons. 30.9% strikeout rate, just an 8% walk rate. He picked up 3 saves last year. Does have some splits issues, so maybe when the lineup has 3 righties coming up, they might go in a different direction. Brazoban is a guy who could potentially sneak in some saves for the Marlins as well, but I still do like Andrew Nardi the most in that bullpen. You got one more reliever for us, Jason?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brock Stewart in Minnesota. Brock Stewart just recently came back from a lengthy stay on the IL. Before that, looked fantastic. You look at what he's done since joining the Twins, 57 strikeouts and 43 innings and 2 home runs allowed. That's a nice skill set for a late inning leverage guy with that. I'll say, I have Mason Miller and AL labor, and I have to put him on the IL. With Stewart, somebody I've had on the IL, I get to put him in Mason Miller's spot. Not looking for him to usurp Yohan Duran's saves. But again, late innings leverage situations, Minnesota doesn't go too deep in their lineup. Or too deep in the games with their pitching staff. So save opportunities, not save, but win opportunities could be there for Stewart as well. He's pitched well. And again, the Twins have one of the easier schedules. They're just the strength of schedule remaining. They have the 13th easiest schedule in the league remaining. So for me, that's a guy that I'm looking at to see what can I get out of this late inning situation here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been all about health with Brock Stewart. Since he's moved to the bullpen, he's been legit one of the best relievers in baseball when on the field. So love the skill set with him. That will do it for our budget pitchers. Going to do an ad here from Home Run Forecast. Can certain weather conditions lead to more home runs? The atmosphere can affect how far a ball flies by 20%. Home Run Forecast measures the weather conditions at a ballpark to tell us if the atmosphere is good or bad for ball flight during a game. An index value that rates the air is created for each game and ballpark and is displayed on a scale from 1 to 10. Home Run Forecast Premium site offers index values by the hour for each game, 24-hour forecasts, wind direction and speed, even whether the roof will be open at certain stadiums. Home Run Forecast is offering a special for the start of the baseball season. You can get access to the premium site for the entire season for only $28, of savings of nearly 30%. Go to homerunforecast.com/RotoWire now to sign up. Finishing out things here with our budget hitters. And my first guy, we're going to look to Detroit and Justin Henry Malloy. Last 18 games, 929 OPS, 5 home runs for Malloy. Last 8 starts, he's either hit second or third in the Tigers lineup. And as you mentioned, a guy like Mark Canha, maybe they move some other pieces that could assure his playing time even more. Riley Green, unfortunately, just got injured. That should guarantee Malloy's at-bats indefinitely. Lots of strikeouts for Malloy, lots of walks. That's kind of been his MO dating back to the minors as well. But 11.3% barrel rate so far, hits a ton of fly balls. Comerica, not a great place to hit, but it's less bad if you're a right-handed hitter. So I like Malloy as a deep league play and dual eligible as well. Who's your first hitter?
My first hitter is the aforementioned Curtis Mead. He has dual eligibility as second and third. Again, the Rays want to see what he is, and the bouncing back and forth. We know he can hit AAA. But can he stay and hit enough more than just a short side platoon guy at the major league level? Well, he's about to get that chance to see what he can do with that. So for me, I want to take that chance, use that dual eligibility in a deeper league, especially if I'm hurting in some spots due to injury that I got to replace and see what he can do, because he has the pedigree to hit. It just hasn't shown at the major league level on a consistent basis yet. And we'll see. The Rays are certainly going to give him the chance, not like they have other options at the moment.
Yeah, I've got Tyler Locklear as my next guy. Looks like the regular first baseman for the Mariners, but as we mentioned, wouldn't be surprised if they add someone at first base. So be prepared to grab Tyler Locklear in a deep league and cut him loose if it looks like he's not going to wind up playing. Just a 593 OPS so far at the major league level, 15-1 strikeout to walk rate in 13 games. Not great. Has hit a couple home runs now. 887 OPS, 12 home runs at AAA. One of the Mariners' better hitting prospects. Like I said, I'm not certain he's going to be getting that long look at first base. That's an easy spot for the Mariners to upgrade at. But if Tyler Locklear does get regular at bats, I think he's got some ability. Your final hitter, sir.
Yeah, that Locklear, that situation, see, that's my fear with Josh Bell earlier. If he gets sent there, I'm like, not so much. My final hitter is I'm looking at Vaughn Grissom with Boston on his way back finally. And I think the timing is good, because as much as I've enjoyed David Hamilton this summer, David Hamilton is on the front seat of the struggle bus lately. Last 30 days, his offense, it's costing him time in the lineup. You're seeing him fade out of the lineup. And so for me, I want to see, obviously Boston wants to say, we didn't give Chris Sale away for nothing. Vaughn Grissom can do something. And Vaughn Grissom seems to be on the cusp of joining the roster. Right now he's on a rehab assignment and doing well. And I would believe he's going to join the club, if not this weekend, early next week. So I would like to see what Vaughn Grissom's going to do and give him the opportunity, because I can't imagine they're calling him up to sit on the bench.
Riding the front seat of the struggle bus. I like that. Haven't heard that before. My final guy, I'm going to go with Davison De Los Santos. He's the return, or part of the return for AJ Puck, now in Miami. He is going to go to AAA Jacksonville initially, but suspect we could be seeing him sooner rather than later. And it's been a breakout season for De Los Santos. 325, 376. 635 slash line, 28 home runs in just 87 games between double and AAA. Strikeout rate's been at 22.6%, but that's a good thing. He's known as very much as a free swinger. Going to be a super aggressive hitter, still just 21. He was with the Guardians in spring training. He picked up in the Rule 5 draft, and he just looked completely lost during Grapefruit League play. So, is he going to be ready to hit at the major league level? Can't say he is, but the opportunity should be there, and the raw power is definitely apparent with Davis and De Los Santos. So in a deeper league, not always easy to find that power upside, and he's certainly got it in abundance.
Yeah, you mentioned the key point there is Cleveland thought enough of him to take him in the Rule 5 draft to give him a chance to see because this was a team going into the season, they were starved for power, and they were going to give him the chance to do it. They tried it with Estevan Florial too, and Florial, didn't pan out. They cleared waivers and whatnot. Both these guys didn't work out, but that's how desperate they were for power before they knew that their stadium was now a home run box with all the changes to it. So I was just checking the schedule. I'm like, when is Jacksonville coming to Charlotte? Oh, not until mid-September. So De Los Santos was likely not going to be on the roster by then with that. But this is great because you want to see if he has the chance. He wasn't going to get it in Cleveland. Arizona, they're probably not going to give him the chance either, or they weren't. And now he's going to have every chance in Miami. So this is what's great about rebuilds, even perpetual ones, that has the chance to see what can happen. And obviously, if they trade Josh Bell over the next 48 hours, that really frees up some opportunity so maybe the stay in Jacksonville is a very short one.
Yeah, Cleveland has done a lot of things right this year, but they wish they could take back picking Estevan Florial over De Los Santos, I'm sure. But that will do it for our podcast this week. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and thank you to Pick 6, our sponsor. I will be back with Eric next week, and thank you, Jason, for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. This was fun. Thanks.
All right, see you guys later.